Hold on! Everyone stay inside the cars! Otto Keller's voice cut through the freezing wind as he leaned out of the locomotive cab, gripping the metal frame with trembling hands. Snowflakes lashed against his face, carried by a brutal January storm sweeping across East Prussia. The iron tracks beneath him groaned with every vibration of the aging steam engine, a machine so worn it seemed to resist every command he gave. His breath fogged the air. His coat was stiff with frost. The wind howled as if the whole night was made of knives. 3 cars behind him, packed far beyond capacity, more than 1,000 people huddled in terrified silence. Women cradled crying infants under thin blankets. Old men clutched battered suitcases containing whatever was left of their lives. A wounded soldier sat on the floor near the coal pile, whispering prayers through clenched teeth. Children with blue lips and shaking hands stared wide-eyed at the lantern Otto had tied to a pipe, its flame flickering like a dying heartbeat. The horizon glowed in flashes of distant fire. Artillery thundered like rolling storms behind them. January 30th, 1945. The day East Prussia collapsed into chaos. The day the roads, bridges and escape routes all fell at once. The day when the only way out was this single half-broken train. Otto slammed the window shut and pulled himself back inside the locomotive, teeth chattering. "Damn this storm," he muttered, wiping snow from his eyebrows. The engine hissed angrily as steam leaked from its cracked joints. Gauges flickered between life and death. The boiler pressure struggled. Brake lines stiffened in the cold. Everything about the machine screamed, "You will not survive this journey." But behind him, 1,200 souls depended entirely on this failing beast, and on him. Otto placed a hand on the photograph pinned above the controls. His wife Anna, smiling as she held their newborn daughter. "Anna, little Sophie," he whispered, tracing the edge of the faded picture. "Let me do one good thing before this war ends." He tightened his gloves and pushed the throttle forward. The wheels clanked, screeched, then finally caught the rail as the train lurched ahead. The coal fire dimmed, the water pressure wavered, but the train moved. Behind him, a boy of about 10 stepped into the doorway between the cars, shivering uncontrollably. "Mister, is it true they blew up the bridge ahead?" Otto frowned. "Where did you hear that?" "People are they're saying we won't make it. They're saying the Soviets are already past Königsberg." Otto knelt and rested a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Listen carefully. As long as this train moves, you stay calm. Understand?" The boy nodded, though fear still danced in his eyes. "Good," Otto said softly. "Go back inside. Keep your mother warm." The boy disappeared into the packed car. Otto returned to the controls. But in truth, he shared the same fear. The escape route west was nearly gone. Only one rail line remained intact, if intact meant shattered, bombed, and frozen under a blizzard so thick he could barely see the tracks. He had volunteered to run this train. No one else dared. The engine roared again, gaining a little strength. He checked the map taped to the wall, hand-drawn, stained with soot. Their first goal, reach Marienburg before dawn. If they passed that town, the chances of surviving increased. Slightly, a sudden explosion boomed in the distance, lighting the sky orange. The passengers gasped in the cars behind him. Otto felt it in his bones. The front was collapsing. Roads filled with refugees had been overrun earlier that morning, and now the only thing separating this train from disaster was time, and an old conductor who hadn't slept in 2 days. He wiped his face again and grabbed the whistle cord. 2 long blasts, one short, His signal to the guards in the rear cars. Danger ahead. Prepare for sudden stop. The tracks curved sharply into a forest. Otto leaned forward, squinting through the storm, then froze. A dark shape lay across the tracks, a fallen pine tree. Massive, blocking the rail entirely. "Scheisse," he whispered. "Not now." He yanked the brake lever. The train screeched horribly. Sparks flew from the wheels as the cars groaned in protest. Passengers cried out as the sudden stop threw them forward. The locomotive shuddered and slid through the snow, fighting for grip. Finally grinding to a halt just meters from the fallen trunk. Otto grabbed an axe from the wall and jumped down into knee-deep snow. The wind hit him like a hammer. He staggered toward the tree, boots sinking into the icy slush. The darkness swallowed everything except the weak glow of the engine's front lamp. Behind him, passengers poured out, coughing in the cold. What happened? Are we under attack? Why did we stop? Back inside, Otto commanded. Everyone stays inside. I just need to clear the track. 2 soldiers limped over to help. One spoke through chattering teeth. We saw the artillery fall 2 kilometers behind us. If we don't move soon... I know, Otto said. Help me cut this. They raised the axe and began hacking at the thick trunk. Each strike echoed across the forest, swallowed by the storm. Snow piled around their boots. Their hands burned from the cold. Minutes passed, then minutes more. Passengers inside crowded the windows, watching with wide, frightened eyes. Mothers whispered to their children. Otto swung the axe again. And again. Until the wood finally split. "Push!" he shouted. The soldiers braced their shoulders against the trunk. The huge tree rolled off the rail and thudded into the snow beside the track. Otto wiped sweat and frost from his forehead. "Back on!" They climbed into the locomotive. Otto shoved more coal into the hungry firebox, sparks jumping around him. The engine growled, then roared back to life. He opened the throttle. He didn't notice at first. Not until he reached the next clearing. But then it hit him. The blizzard had weakened. The darkness had thinned. And on the far horizon, a faint red glow pulsed like a heartbeat. The front, the Soviet advance, coming straight toward them. Otto swallowed hard. He pulled the whistle cord again. One long blast. "We're running out of time," he whispered, gripping the controls. "This train has to move faster." He fed more coal, increased the pressure, forced the engine to push harder. The wheels spun, caught, and the train lurched forward faster than before. Behind him, someone began singing softly, a mother calming her children. Other voices joined hers, not in celebration, but in desperation, a trembling choir fighting back fear. The storm eased further. The tracks ahead stretched into the night, like a thin thread holding life and death apart. Otto tightened his grip on the controls. His train, this ancient, dying machine, was all that stood between 1,200 people and the fire spreading across the horizon. He breathed deeply, steadying himself. "Come on, old girl," he whispered to the engine. "Just a little farther." Then, a distant rumble, low, heavy, metallic. Not artillery, not wind, something else. He looked up, and his heart froze. Headlights, huge. Moving across the snowy plain. Tanks. Soviet tanks, a whole column, and they were turning toward the tracks. Otto's blood ran cold. He yanked the whistle with everything he had. 3 rapid blasts. The warning for immediate danger. Passengers screamed behind him. The soldiers scrambled to the windows. Mothers covered their children. Otto slammed the throttle forward. The engine roared. The wheels screeched, and the miracle train charged into the darkness, with enemy armor speeding toward the rail. "Faster! Otto, they're coming straight for us!" Corporal Weiss shouted from the doorway between cars, his voice nearly swallowed by the howling wind. Otto didn't look back. He couldn't. His entire focus was locked on the tracks ahead, on the ancient engine screaming under his command, on the thin line of rails that could vanish at any second under the weight of artillery and snow. Behind him, the terrified cries of passengers echoed down the length of the train. Children sobbed. Mothers whispered prayers. Elderly men clutched wooden canes as the rumbling of tanks behind them grew louder, deeper, closer. Otto shoved the throttle forward until it clicked against the iron stop. "This is all she has," he yelled. "She cannot go faster." Weiss gripped the handrail as the train bucked over uneven tracks. "Then God help us all." The whistle shrieked above them, a desperate cry lost in the winter storm. Otto leaned out of the window, scanning the horizon, and what he saw drained the warmth from his body. A line of steel monsters, headlights glowing like angry eyes, turning toward the railway embankment. Snow churned beneath their treads as they advanced. Enemy tanks, cutting across the plain, closing the distance fast. He ducked back inside, slamming the window shut as bullets cracked in the air. Machine gun fire. The Soviets had spotted them. Passengers screamed as rounds ripped through wooden planks, showering the cars with splinters. A man dropped to the floor, clutching his arm. Children were pulled under benches by frantic parents. Otto's heart pounded against his ribs. "Come on, old girl, come on!" The engine shuddered. The wheels screamed. Snow blasted past in a white blur. They had maybe 30 seconds before the tanks reached the embankment and cut them off entirely. Weiss climbed into the locomotive cab, panting. "There's a small ridge ahead," he shouted over the roar of the storm. "If we make it past that curve, they'll lose sight of us for a minute." "A minute is all we need," Otto yelled. The ridge approached, a sharp, blind turn curving into a dense wall of pine forest. The danger was enormous. If the rail was damaged, the locomotive would derail instantly, killing everyone behind it. But there was no choice. He braced himself, pulled the whistle cord hard. The train lunged into the curve, wheels scraping, sparks raining down the snowbank. For a moment, it felt like the entire machine was going to tip. Otto felt his stomach rise. The cab tilted dangerously. Passengers cried out as baggage toppled. Then, the wheels slammed back onto the rails, the engine straightened, and the train shot into the forest. Everything went dark. Pines closed around them like prison bars. Bullets thudded into tree trunks behind them, but grew fainter, quieter, then stopped. They were hidden. For now. Otto slowed the engine just enough to keep control and wiped frost from the gauges. "Pressure's dropping," he muttered. "Boilers losing heat." Weiss glanced at the firebox. The flames were thin and starving. The coal pile was shrinking too fast. "We're burning too much," he said. "We'll never make Marienburg like this." Otto didn't answer. He already knew it. They needed fuel, wood, coal, something, anything. But stopping meant death. Moving meant survival, for as long as the engine held together. Weiss looked back toward the passenger cars. "They're terrified, Otto." "I know," he said quietly. "But terror keeps them alive." Suddenly the radio crackled. A faint, broken signal. All units, evacuations, halted, Soviet, breakthrough, repeat, halted. Then it died. Weiss swallowed hard. "If evacuations are halted, then we're on our own." "We always were," Otto whispered. The train pushed deeper into the forest, steam trailing behind like a wounded animal. Snow thickened on the tracks. The rails glistened with ice. Otto loosened his grip long enough to flex his numb fingers. Then, a shadow moved near the front. Otto blinked, once, twice, another shadow, and another. Not soldiers, not civilians. Wolves. A whole pack running parallel to the train, their eyes reflecting lantern light. Their paws kicked up snow as they followed effortlessly, matching the train's slow pace. Weiss staggered back. Don't tell me even the wolves want us dead. Otto shook his head. No, they're fleeing the front, same as us. The thought chilled him more than the storm. Even the animals were running from the chaos. Minutes passed. The forest thinned. Ahead, an open stretch of track appeared, and Otto's blood ran cold. The rails were twisted, bent upward by a recent explosion. Metal mangled like torn paper. A crater sat beside the track, still smoking. "Hold on!" Otto yelled. He yanked the brake lever. Nothing. The brake lines were frozen. The train hurtled forward toward the destroyed rail. Weiss grabbed the wall, eyes wide with fear. "We're going to derail!" Otto acted without thinking. He shoved the throttle into reverse. The engine screamed. Steam blasted from the valves in a violent eruption. The wheels locked and skidded. Sparks shot out like fireworks. The locomotive slowed. 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 But not enough. Otto jumped down, boots skidding across the metal floor. He flung open the firebox door and grabbed a metal hook. Weiss, shovel snow into the firebox. Now. What? Are you mad? Do it. Weiss scooped snow from the cab floor and dumped it into the roaring flames. Steam exploded outward. Pressure dropped violently, slowing the engine. Just enough. Just enough. The train crawled forward, barely moving, inches from the twisted track. Then it stopped, dead still, silence except for the soft hiss of cooling metal. Otto exhaled shakily. We made it. Weiss leaned against the wall, breath trembling. You're insane. Maybe. Otto opened the cab door. We need to fix that track. Weiss stared at him. That will take hours. We don't have hours. Snow drifted down softly. The forest behind them groaned with distant thunder. The Soviets were still coming, and the tanks would reach the forest edge sooner than Otto liked to admit. He walked to the front of the locomotive where the twisted rail lay. Steam rose from the crater's edge. Splintered metal bent at impossible angles. Weiss cursed under his breath. We can't fix this, Otto. We must. He grabbed the emergency repair kit. Nothing more than a hammer, a few steel spikes, and a rusted crowbar. It was laughably inadequate, but still, he knelt beside the bent track. Passengers watched from the windows, faces pale, eyes wide, breath fogging the glass. A little girl pressed her hand against the window. She mouthed something silently. Please. Otto's heart tightened. He swung the hammer. Metal rang across the frozen air. Again, and again, and again. Weiss and two wounded soldiers joined him, pulling on the rail, forcing it downward inch by inch. Their breath steamed. Their hands bled through their gloves. Shards of frozen metal scattered in the snow. The forest groaned with another distant explosion. Time was slipping away. A soldier looked back nervously. Sir, should we prepare the passengers to run? Otto kept hammering. No one runs. If they run, they die. If the train moves, they live. Minutes dragged like hours. Their hands froze. Their lungs burned, but they worked. Finally. The rail snapped downward into place. Not perfect, not safe, but passable. Weiss collapsed to his knees. It's enough. It has to be enough. Otto stood, panting. Back on board. We don't have long. As they climbed into the locomotive, a faint glow appeared behind the trees. Headlights. The tanks had reached the forest. Otto didn't hesitate. He shoveled what little coal remained. The fire roared weakly. He opened the throttle. The engine groaned, protesting the abuse. The wheels turned slowly. Weiss stared in horror. They're accelerating! Otto looked back, then forward, then back again. A decision formed in his mind, a dangerous one, a desperate one. He pulled the whistle cord long and hard. One single blast that echoed like a warning through the night. Weiss grabbed the rail. Otto, what are you doing? Otto set his jaw. We're going to attempt the river bridge. Weiss froze. The bridge? It was bombed last week. It's half destroyed. Otto nodded. Which is why they won't expect a train to use it. Weiss stared at him as if he'd gone mad. Otto, if the bridge collapses, we all die. Otto gripped the controls, eyes fixed forward. If we don't cross it, we die anyway. The miracle train surged toward the river and toward a broken bridge waiting in the darkness. We keep moving, no matter what happens. Conductor Marek's voice cut through the freezing night as the battered evacuation train thundered deeper into the mist-covered countryside. The smoke-filled sky pressed down on them like a suffocating blanket. The front line was collapsing faster than anyone expected, and the refugees inside the train felt every vibration in their bones. Papa, are the soldiers still behind us? Little Anya tugged at her father's coat. Her voice trembled, barely louder than the clattering wheels. Pavel knelt beside her, brushing soot from her forehead. They won't catch us. Not tonight. But it wasn't a promise. Only hope wearing the mask of confidence. The train roared across a narrow wooden bridge, the beams groaning under the weight of hundreds of desperate souls. Somewhere below them, wind howled through a frozen riverbed. The January night swallowed everything. Marek! Lanterns ahead! Too many to be hunters or villagers. Engineer Thomas leaned out the side window, gripping the steel handle as a column of flickering orange lights shimmered across the next ridge. Marek's stomach tightened. Signals? No. Torches. Then it's not friendly. The refugees sensed it too. Heads lifted. Conversations stopped mid-breath. Mothers clutched children closer. Even the baby who had been crying for hours suddenly went silent, as if the air itself demanded it. Brace yourselves. We're not slowing. Marek whispered it to himself more than anyone else, but the entire train seemed to hear. The torches on the ridge began moving, fast, swarming like fireflies caught in a storm. They're shelling the road behind us, pushing everyone toward the tracks, Thomas muttered, watching flashes light the sky. Marek's jaw clenched. Then we're going straight through whatever's ahead. The train didn't have soldiers. It didn't have armor. It didn't have guns. But it had 100-200 civilians who refused to die without trying to outrun the war one last time. Mama, look! Anya pressed against the window. Figures were racing down the hillside. Dozens. Then hundreds. Torches bobbed frantically as they sprinted toward the railway. Pavel's heart dropped. Not soldiers, refugees, thousands of them. They had been chasing the train for miles, praying it would stop, praying it would take them. We can't run them over, Thomas said, voice cracking. They'll try to climb on, Marek replied. If we slow even a little, we're finished. He didn't say what both men knew. If the engine stalled, artillery or rival patrols would find them within minutes. The refugees on foot reached the tracks. Dozens jumped forward, waving arms, screaming for mercy. Others stumbled, falling into the snow. Children were dragged through the dark by frantic parents. The train barreled toward them like a steel beast. "Hold on!" Marek yanked the whistle cord, the scream echoing across the valley like a desperate warning from another world. But no one moved off the tracks. Instead, they ran with the train, alongside it, behind it, chasing it like their last hope. Pavel shielded Anya's eyes as bodies swarmed both sides. Hands slapped against the windows. Fingers clawed at frozen steel. Voices rose, pleading, begging, sobbing. Inside the passenger cars, mothers covered children's ears. The world outside was nothing but screams. "Marek, if they get caught under the wheels..." "I know!" He blew the whistle again, and again, and again. The train roared forward. Snow blasted aside. Torches scattered. People leapt away at the last second. Some didn't, but Marek could not stop. By some miracle, the majority made it out of the train's path. Others collapsed in exhaustion, praying the next train, if there ever was one, would save them. But this one could not. Inside the last carriage, an elderly woman cried softly into her shawl. "I was one of them. Just weeks ago," she whispered. Her friend held her trembling hands. "We all were." The tracks curved sharply into a forested canyon, hiding the chaos behind them. Only darkness and the rattling of wheels remained. The refugees on board finally exhaled. For now. "We can't outrun everyone," Thomas said quietly. "If patrols catch us on the open tracks..." "We'll find cover," Marek answered. "Where?" "Anywhere. A tunnel, an abandoned station, a freight yard. Something." But there was no map. The railway lines had changed a dozen times since the war swallowed half the continent. They were running blind. A freezing gust cut through the broken windows. Snow whipped inside the carriages, stinging faces and settling on coats. Anya curled into her father's chest. "Papa, why is the world shaking?" Pavel kissed her forehead. "Because it's scared too." A new sound cut through the night, distant but unmistakable. The low hum of engines, not trains, not trucks. Aircraft. "Everyone down!" Marek shouted as he slammed the lights inside the engine cab to off. The train plunged into near-total darkness. Passengers flattened against floors. Mothers covered children. Elderly men pressed their faces into the wooden slats. The engine drones grew louder, then louder still. A spotlight flared in the sky, searching the valley. "If they see the steam..." "They won't," Marek whispered. Tomas was already throttling the boiler, forcing the engine to run quieter. Heat dropped instantly. The train shuddered weakly. The aircraft passed overhead, shadows sweeping across the snowy canyon. Everyone held their breath. Then, the engine hum faded. They had been missed. The train crawled forward at a crawl until the valley widened again. Only then did Marek slowly open the vents, letting the boiler breathe. Warmth began to return. Barely. "Marek, look ahead." Thomas pointed. A small wooden station appeared around the bend. Half collapsed, roof ruined, tracks covered in snow. But it had something more important. A tunnel entrance behind it. Long, deep, hidden. Marek felt hope surge for the first time in hours. "We'll shelter inside, regroup, fix leaks, let everyone rest." But as the train rolled closer, Pavel stuck his head out the window, pointing toward the platform. His voice shook. "Someone's there. Not soldiers, not refugees. One man." "Stop the engine!" Marek ordered. Thomas stared. "Are you insane? What if he's a scout, a trap, a signal? Marek narrowed his eyes. No, look at him. The man wasn't armed. He wasn't hiding. He wasn't motioning for help. He was signaling a warning, a desperate one. The train screeched onto the cracked platform, metal shrieking against metal. Passengers held on to anything they could as sparks burst beneath the wheels. The lone man rushed forward as Marek opened the side door. His face was pale, frostbitten, eyes wide with terror. He grabbed Marek's arm. His voice came out in a whisper. The tunnel is rigged. Tomas froze. Rigged? How? The man shook harder. Explosives. The whole mountain. If you go inside, none of you will come out. Pavel felt his blood run cold. The tunnel was supposed to be salvation. Instead, it was a trap waiting for the next train of refugees running from the front. Waiting for them. The man squeezed Marek's sleeve, pleading, I tried to disarm it. Too many charges. Too deep. You need to back away. Now. Marek looked across the station ruins. What about patrols? They'll see us here. Better than being buried alive. The wind howled through the broken rafters like a warning. Marek stepped down onto the platform, snow crunching beneath his boots. He looked up at the sky, dark, endless, merciless. Then he looked at the man who had just saved all of them. What's your name? The man swallowed. Jakub. You're coming with us. Jakub shook his head violently. No, I'll slow you down. You warned us. That means you ride. Jakub's eyes filled with tears that instantly froze on his lashes. The sky flared suddenly. Not lightning. Flares. Dozens of them. Dropping slowly over the valley like burning snowflakes. Tomas whispered the only word any of them could manage. They found us. Pavel grabbed Anya, shielding her with his coat. Mothers screamed. Men cursed under their breath. Children cried into trembling hands. The flares settled over the station, lighting the train like a beacon, marking it, exposing it. The night, once their cover, now betrayed them. Marek scrambled onto the engine, shouting, Everyone hold on! He slammed the throttle. The wheels shrieked. The train lurched forward. Snow exploded behind it. Jakub clung to the doorway. Pavel hugged Anya so tight she could barely breathe. The flares burned above them. And from the far end of the valley, searchlights appeared, followed by engines, followed by the unmistakable shadows of armored vehicles heading straight toward the tracks. Everyone, stay down. Don't make a sound, Marek shouted, gripping the throttle as the searchlights swept over the snow-covered train. The wind howled through the broken windows, carrying the cries and whispers of passengers pressed against the car floors. Mothers shielded children. Soldiers crouched in frozen silence. Even the little ones knew something monumental was happening. We can't outrun them, Tomas shouted from the engine cab. His breath fogged in the freezing air. The coal fire struggled, the boiler groaned, and the locomotive coughed clouds of icy steam. Marek shook his head, eyes locked forward. We'll make it. We have to. Every second counts. Snow exploded from under the wheels as the train surged forward. Behind them, armored vehicles rumbled, crunching snow and earth like giants pursuing prey. The flares above cast harsh light, glinting off steel, reflecting the terror in every passenger's eyes. Jakub clung to the side rail, teeth chattering. How do we survive this? Marek didn't answer. He only pulled the throttle harder. The engine groaned, but it obeyed. Hold tight. There's a bridge ahead, a voice from the rear car shouted. The passengers leaned as far forward as they could see, hearts pounding. Below, The river froze under the bitter winter sky. The bridge's planks were partially destroyed, some missing entirely. The timber beams creaked ominously. Every moment felt like walking on the edge of the world. Marek felt his jaw tighten. It's the only way. If we don't cross, the patrols catch us. Keep your heads down, everyone. The train sped forward. The front wheels hit the bridge. A groan echoed through the structure, the timbers bending dangerously. Snow and ice fell into the river below. Passengers pressed to the floors. Mothers clutched children. The elderly muttered prayers. "The bridge! It's breaking!" Thomas yelled. Sparks flew from the engine. Steam hissed from the valves. The locomotive trembled violently. Marek gritted his teeth. "Keep moving! Don't stop! Just push through!" Every second, the bridge threatened to collapse under the weight of the train, but somehow, impossibly, the engine surged across. The cars followed with terrifying squeals and groans. "We made it! We're still alive!" A woman in the last carriage whispered, tears running down her face. Her daughter clung to her tightly. Marek allowed himself a brief glance back. The tanks had reached the riverbank, but the train was gone, disappearing into the distant woods. "Stop! Stop! Stop!" a voice screamed behind them. But the soldiers, exhausted and frozen, were too far away to make a difference. Marek kept the throttle steady, guiding the locomotive into the tunnel Jakub had warned about. Its mouth was dark, cold, and narrow. The engine entered, wheels clanging on the uneven rails. We're safe," a young girl asked from the rear carriage, clutching a doll. Marek shook his head. "Not yet, just hidden." Jakub appeared, leaning on a broken railing. "The explosives, the tunnel. We didn't have time to disarm everything." Marek clenched his fists. "Then we pass quickly, no stopping, every second counts." They navigated the tunnel, the wheels clanging on warped rails. Steam hissed from frozen pipes. Snow fell inside the broken windows of the cars. The passengers pressed forward, hearts in their throats. Marek's mind raced. Every possible danger flickered before him. Collapsing tunnel, enemy patrols, frozen rails, sabotaged bridge. Every mistake meant death. "Look! Light at the end!" Jakub shouted. A dim glow shimmered at the tunnel exit. Hope surged through the passengers. Snow glimmered as the train exited. Trees surrounded them, but the worst seemed past. "Keep moving! Don't slow down!" Marek shouted. He fed coal into the firebox, steam roaring, the locomotive straining. The tracks ahead were clear. For now, they were alive. But barely. A sudden explosion rocked the train from behind. The patrol had fired. Artillery shells buried themselves in the snow, shaking the earth. Sparks and fragments flew. Thomas yelled, "They're catching up!" Marek didn't flinch. He opened the throttle fully. "We push forward. No stopping." The train climbed a small rise. Behind them, the engines struggled in the snow. The tracks ahead were mangled, twisted, but still passable. Every second was a battle. Every second lives depended on one man and one failing locomotive. "Marek, the passengers!" Jakub's voice trembled. "Some are panicking. They might fall." Marek turned, saw mothers shielding children, men shouting to keep everyone calm. "Everyone holds on. We survive together. One step at a time." The train surged downhill, wheels squealing. One car jolted, nearly tipping. Passengers screamed, clutched the walls. Marek's hands burned from gripping the controls. Sweat mixed with frost on his brow. Just a little farther. Just a little farther. He whispered to the locomotive. It was old, broken, cold, but it obeyed. Behind them, the flares were fading. The tanks were slowing, patrols confused by their disappearance in the forest. The miracle, it seemed, had a momentum of its own. The train approached a clearing. A small village lay ahead. Wooden homes, smoke from chimneys, tiny signs of life. Marek exhaled. We made it. We made it. We're alive? A child asked. His mother hugged him, tears freezing on their cheeks. Jakub nodded. Yes, for now. We live. They slowed the train as it entered the village. Locals rushed forward, offering blankets, food, and help. Mothers wept. Children laughed through sobs. The miracle had arrived. Thank you. Thank you. Passengers cried to Marek and Jakub. He shook his head. No, thank the train. And your courage. Jakub smiled faintly, frost covering his hair. And luck. A lot of luck. The locomotive hissed, finally resting. Steam curling into the cold night air. The journey was over. The miracle complete. 200 souls had survived what seemed impossible. One conductor, one failing locomotive, endless courage. History would call it the miracle train. We survived, Marek whispered, voice breaking. He glanced at the photo of his daughter in his coat pocket. Anna, little Sophie, we did it. Snow continued to fall. The war raged beyond the village. The front lines continued to crumble. But inside this small miracle, hope burned brightly. And for 48 hours, in the frozen heart of January 1945, the train had carried more than passengers. It had carried life, courage, and the belief that even in the darkest hour, one man could change history.